Buddhists are often asked, I as a monk am often asked, are you a vegetarian? And when I answer in the negative and say, no, I'm not, people are really very surprised. I remember hearing the Dalai Lama once give a talk. He was on a plane going from one place to another, and the hostess said, lunch is ready soon. You'll be having a vegetarian meal, won't you? And the Dalai Lama said, no, I'll have a non-vegetarian meal. And she was so surprised. She said, I thought good Buddhists were vegetarian. And he smiled and said, jokingly, I'm not a good Buddhist. So it's funny that probably the only thing most people know about Buddhism is that they're vegetarians, and it's not true. Okay? Throughout history, the majority of Buddhists have not been vegetarians, and most important of all, the Buddha was not a vegetarian. There are 7 or 8 places in the Tipitaka, in the Buddhist scriptures, where it specifically mentions that the Buddha attended a dana. He was invited to somebody's home for a meal, and he was served, amongst other things, meat. And we know, for example, that because he did this, one of the other religions of the time, Jainism, well, they attacked the Buddha. They criticized him because he ate meat. So we know that the Buddha was not a vegetarian, and nowhere in the Pali scriptures, the Buddhist Bible, does he say anything about food. The only thing that the only guidance the Buddha gave on consuming solids and liquids is that he made abstaining from alcohol one of the basic precepts. So clearly he thought that that was important. And the second thing he said was, in the Vinaya, the rules for monks and nuns, he asked monks and nuns to avoid eating certain types of meat. For example, the flesh of a lion, the flesh of a bear, the flesh of a hyena. Why somebody would want to eat that, I don't know. But several things. And then he gave the reasons for that. Because sometime previously, apparently, some hunters had killed a lion, they left the body there. A monk saw that, and or maybe, I can't remember now, maybe the hunters cooked some lion meat and gave it to him. And then when he was living later in the forest, a lion smelt the meat of its kind on him and attacked him. In other words, for a very good reason, the Buddha said, don't eat the meat of these particular wild animals, because later on they might smell that on you and they might attack you. Okay? In saying don't eat these types of meat, very clearly he was saying, well, it's okay to eat other types of meat. So that's the basis of it. Now, the reality is there are many people who think that vegetarian is more consistent with the Dhamma. Well, the person who was most consistent with the Dhamma was the Buddha. However, just because the Buddha didn't mention some things, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do them or that we can't do them. If you're comfortable with vegetarianism and you feel more at ease because of that, or if you feel that by refusing to eat meat that you are making some important difference to the lives of animals, I think that that is perfectly acceptable. There was a period of time when for 5 or 6 years, I genuinely tried to avoid eating any forms of meat. Unfortunately, I slipped back and I don't eat as much as I used to, but I still do eat some meat. And I don't think that that makes me any less a Buddhist. So this is my idea. If you feel it's okay to eat meat, then do so. If you feel for you personally it's not so good, then do so. But do this. If you become a vegetarian, don't look down your nose at people who aren't. If you become a vegetarian, don't think that you're better than others. If you're a vegetarian, don't go around insisting that others become vegetarians. It's a personal choice on your part, and that's okay. Other than that, the most important thing is really basically not what we put in our mouth, but rather what that comes out of our mouth. That is how we speak.